All right, joining us now for tonight's big close-up is Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. Senator, we're so happy to have you. We've been hoping to have you for a while now and happy that today is the day. I want to open with this. Last week, we saw House and Senate Democrats try to pass the War Powers Resolution to limit the president's authority in Iran. What is your message to your colleagues who still oppose this operation and not only oppose it, but would have the American people believe that it's been an epic failure? Well, for me, I would like to remind everybody that every single Democrat has always said that we must never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. Every single one. And now everyone that's run for president, and whether that's Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris, they all said the same thing. In fact, Kamala Harris, in late 24 during her campaign, she identified Iran was her top concern. You know, our greatest adversary. That was her quote. And now when Donald Trump has done something about that and now has made that virtually now impossible, you don't have to agree with on everything, but I don't understand why Democrats can't say that after this, it's made things more safe, it made the region more secure. And now if every single Democrat agrees that we should never allow that to happen, and now that does make that essentially impossible, I think that's a good thing, and I think that's been a very strong outcome so far. Senator, again, thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate it. You say what you mean what you say, and we appreciate that on this show, no matter what your opinions are, if you agree with them or not. That's the part of the debate part of this. When we talk about debate, I feel like in Congress, we've kind of lost debate, and we've gone straight to we're going to whip the votes. If we have them, it happens in back rooms, and then we get to the floor and we vote. But we've got this, the filibuster on the SAVE Act. There's a lot of things that we look back and watch movies like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and ask ourselves, where are those statesmen at? Because they don't seem to be in front of the microphone or on the floor anymore. I'm going to ask you about the Department of Homeland Security. This is an important thing. It's not funded today because of ICE, which has funding. You've talked about this. I understand your position. What is the deal that could be made? What is it? I mean, we hear this week that Kristi Noem spent $220 million on advertisements. Could you pass the funding and maybe just pull that much out of this budget and say, hey, we'll make that right? Like, is there anything here other than, I guess, somehow limiting ICE's ability to do its job that would get Democrats to at least pass a funding bill for DHS while we've had, 3 terrorist attacks in the last week? Well, just like a epic fury, I am the only Democrat that has refused to vote in shutting down DHS. Literally the only one. And now it all agree that this would not have any impact in ICE. They already have their funding, and it doesn't push or force ICE to do any of those kinds of reforms that people think are necessary now too. Why would you want to punish all of these workers that under DHS? Only thing that it could do is just make us less safe, and that also makes people have to go without getting paid. I'm at the airport virtually every week of the year, and I ask all those TSA agents, and I said, yeah, hey, do you like not to get paid for your work? I haven't met one saying, no, it's no problem. It's not a big deal. So I truly don't understand that, other than it's just toxic for a Democrat to agree with something that maybe the Republican side might agree with that. And now I know that, but it's very easy, more of a country over party, or I'm going to put those union workers over it, nor America's security over what the base might demand. Senator Guy Benson, genuinely grateful to have you here. I have a question about the filibuster, because there are some Republicans now saying, and conservatives, hey, the GOP in the Senate should blow up the filibuster. Some people making this case, go nuclear, get rid of the filibuster. And the argument that's often made in favor of that is next time the Democrats have power, they're going to do it, because so many Democrats are on the record in support of doing away with the filibuster. I don't want that to happen, but I am concerned about your colleagues doing precisely that when they have the power. Do you know of any of your colleagues, they might not want to say it publicly, you don't have to name them, but do you know of any of your colleagues in the Senate who would still be opposed to changing the filibuster rules on legislation in the future. Well, I mean, I'd like to remind everybody that it wasn't just a couple years ago. Every single Democrat, including myself, I campaign on this now to remove the filibuster. And now that I was wrong. That was actually wrong for that. I would say that. Oh, and now, all of us, we love the filibuster. The Democrats love the filibuster. And it reminds people that it really was require us to work with the other side. So now that we're in a situation right now. So I think the real danger is it's just dangerous to make the Senate just essentially the same thing as the House and work as majority rules, and that could create a lot of more different flux. But now I think, we as the Democrats, we should acknowledge, we love the filibuster now. It wasn't just a couple of years ago that we all were calling to end that. And now I think it's appropriate to remind people and say, yes, we were wrong, with those beliefs too. Senator Fetterman, it's so great to have you on the show. Thanks so much. Clearly, you're a contrarian in your party. No bones about that. You have positions that your colleagues don't have. You've come out in support of this war effort. You've been a staunch supporter of Israel, just to name a few things. I want to know, honestly, is anybody in your party talking to you when you see them in the hallways? Do they look at you? Do they look away? Do you have any friends left in the Democratic Party? Well, I mean, I would refer to myself as a contrarian, but I'm a Democrat that I represent like a very, very important state like Pennsylvania. And it just forces you and reminds you got to be honest and recognize that there are both sides part of the American democracy. And now that does not mean just because we're in one party doesn't mean the other party is always wrong. And I'm going to agree with them, or I'm going to support the kinds of things that it's absolutely right. Epic fury was absolutely necessary. And I don't know why we can't just say that this has made the world better and stronger right now. And now it's wrong to punish and shut down DHS because we want to make some changes on ICE, knowing absolutely that it has no impact, on ICE to do that. The thing that I am learning is that the second time you agree with President Trump or the Republicans, you're punished or you're isolated and criticized. And I don't understand why we're in that situation. So, it's trying to find a way forward. And now sometimes, I mean, many of my colleagues are cordial and some, are not so much because I think we have to find a better way forward. We need each other on both sides. And now I can't imagine now. It's like it used to be we all would just rally around our military. But, I am not identified a single Democrat that has said positive things about Epic Fury right now, only criticized that. And also, I just want to just remind, all of the media, it's like they haven't seen the new leader of Iran, not one single time, not even his voice, demand some proof of life. Look what Israel and America has accomplished now. It's really remarkable, kinds of thing. It's made the region much more safer and the world more secure. It wasn't that long. Democrats, we all agreed that Iran was a serious problem and we can never allow them to have a nuclear weapon. Why? Why can't we say at least this is a good thing? All it's done is they criticized that and made it just a partisan, and it's never going to be, for me, it's always party. I mean, it's country over the party. Senator, we really appreciate that. I do have to ask you about the Save America Act. I put up on X what folks most wanted to ask of you, and they said, hey, we want to ask the senator about the Save America Act because you had signaled that you had some support for it, and now maybe you don't have support for it, some opposition. I know that mail-in ballots are important to you, but could you explain to our audience why you would be a no on the Save America Act and why you think that mail-in votes are secure, even though folks are losing that chain of custody with their ballot? Well, Republicans know that mail-in voting is secure. Some of the best examples of that are in Florida, Ohio. And, when I was lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania, the Republican Party pushed and developed the mail-in voting program in 2019. Every single one of them voted for it, and they pushed that for it. In fact, we actually gave up our strayed party voting in Pennsylvania. So now that's a necessary part of our democracy, and that's part of it as well, too. But now, for me as a Democrat, I will say and acknowledge now to produce basic fundamental kinds of ID to vote. That's not outrageous. That's not Jim Crow. That's not vote suppression because that happens all across America. In Wisconsin just passed that and put that in its constitution as well. And also Florida also passed the equivalent of Safe Act. But one thing they said is that we are keeping mail-in voting because it is secure and that's a necessary part of the democratic process too. Senator, before we let you go, I just want to ask you one thing. When you say that sometimes you have to put the country before your party, when you say vote, and I'm not going to pull up your whole voting record, but when you support a bill that Republicans are pushing forward and the Democrat line is to be against it, are you representing your conscience or are you representing Democrat voters in Pennsylvania? Or do you think both? In other words, what is the feedback you're getting from those Democrat voters in Pennsylvania when you do that? Oh, well, I'm always going to be on the right side with Israel. I'm always going to back our military 100%. And I want to dare any Democrats that are going to vote if there's actually they ask for more for funding to support this. I'm absolutely going to vote for that and dare anyone to vote against our military vote what's necessary. So for me, now, why would you punish these kinds of people at DHS after this? So yes, I hear from a lot of different people, but I think people are very positive and actually appreciate it for that. So Pennsylvania is a very, very purple state, and that reminds everybody, and I also refuse to call Republicans that they're Nazis or they're fascists. They're trying to destroy the Constitution. They love our country any less than we claim and do. So we have to find a better way forward. So for me, my vote and my voice is going to follow what I think is the moral clarities and whatever the situation is. And that may put me at odds with my caucus. I don't take any pleasure in that, but I feel better knowing being very truth to what I happens to believe is true. And I'm going to continue to do that. Remind that it has put me at odds with parts of my base. Well, Senator John Fetterman, we really appreciate all of your time and answering our questions tonight. Thank you so much. Oh, thanks for having me on. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.